By now, you've seen season 2, just like you've seen and heard the man sitting next to me who needs no introduction on this show. WTOP film critic Jason Fraley is in the house to talk about this show that we all enjoy. Jason, welcome back, my man.
Thanks for having me, sir.
It's always a pleasure, as we were talking about before. I mean, this is just fun for us, right?
Well, and it's fun because the first time we came on here was your very first episode, and we were talking about All the President's Men, a political thriller, and now we've come full circle. It's great.
We keep doing this full circle thing. Okay, so obviously we're going to talk about House of Cards. What do you think it is about House of Cards that really has people enthralled with it? Because like I said in the intro, this is online only web television series.
Yeah, that facet of it is what will put it in the history books. Whether the rest of the seasons tank or are incredible, people will be talking about House of Cards because, like you said in the intro, it's the first Emmy nominated for Best TV Drama, something that's purely web content. It's the game changer. It's what Facebook did for social media. House of Cards is doing for digital streaming.
Right.
Other series were available on Netflix, but or Amazon Prime or before House of Cards, but they had a broadcast television component. And this is purely, if you want to watch this, if you want to binge watch this, you have to have Netflix. And it's allowed Netflix to invest in other shows too,
Right.
And now you hear Amazon's doing their original content and things like that too. So from a purely, historic, technological standpoint, it is on the timeline of TV history. And for that, it's great. In terms of the actual show, it is people, especially people in the D.C. area, but it also has nationwide appeal. Love the corruption, watching corruption inside Washington.
Right.
We live in a time when it seems like, no matter what party you're in, it seems like everyone can agree that hardly anything's getting done. It's like factual that it's the least productive, Congress in the last however. So people like to see, a politician, even though it's cutthroat, even kill to get your way, Frank Underwood, Kevin Spacey. People like to see someone that can whip up the votes and pass things. I think that's part of the appeal. And it's almost like the Godfather puppet master appeal.
Right.
With they have the logo with the marionette and the Godfather. For here, it's the upside down American flag. That shows in the logo, and so it ties into the whole, who's the person pulling the strings, and in this case, it's Frank Underwood. So I think that's why.
Yeah, definitely, man. So I love when you come on because you just take it away, Jason. You know what I mean?
You can just sit back and sip your water.
I'll just ask a question and then I'll go. Yeah, but I do think you're right. I think the binge factor plays a huge part of it because the fact that you can just sit there and instead of having to wait for next week, it's a cliffhanger, you just hit enter and you're in the next season. If not, it's going to automatically do it for you. So I think the binge factor definitely has a big thing to do with it. And you were, if memory serves correct, you were at the premiere when House of Cards Season 1 premiered here in D.C. And didn't Kevin Spacey talk to you a little bit about how the whole online television thing was changing the game? What did he have to say to you?
Yeah, it was over at the museum, which is an awesome museum over there.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You can actually kind of see the street view during the opening credits. Yeah, Kevin Spacey was there, Robin Wright was there, got to talk to them all along the red carpet, and Spacey and actually the creator / writer Beau Willimon were talking about how they actually factored in the binge factor in the creation of the show.
Right.
In terms of Spacey wanted to be on it just because it was revolutionary and he likes pushing the bounds. He's done everything he needs to in movies, from Seven to Usual Suspects, American Beauty.
Right.
So, but in terms of this new creation, the writer-creator Beau Willimon was saying that he had a freedom and a flexibility to kind of game it out long term because they had a 2-season deal from the start. So he was writing for 26 episodes as opposed to just season 1. We'll see how the ratings do and let the ratings dictate it.
Right.
He had kind of had it mapped out, and you can kind of see that arc in there.
Yeah.
And you'll even notice if you look at the episode titles, it's just chapter 16, chapter 17. It's not, there's no title name like Smoke Gets in Your Eyes like Mad Men or whatever.
Right,
every
right.
episode has a title. This, it's just new segments in the overall arc.
Yeah. So, all right, before we get into the arc, and it's interesting, like you said, the writer, I think we can definitely see in season 2 kind of how he was writing to get to the last 3 episodes.
Right.
But your opinion, what did you think of season 2?
Season 2 itself. I thought they did, we'll start with the good and then maybe things that I thought might be pushing it. I think they do a great job of weaving in current events in terms of, there's a whole thing about a government shutdown. There's sexual assault in the military, which has been going on here. Right. There's this whole subplot of almost like a Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, hacker, NSA type, cyber spying thing going on. There's China rears its head too in terms of Raymond Tusk orchestrating things behind the scenes. So there are a lot of issues that are going on currently in Washington, similar to the newsroom, except they somehow knock it out every episode. It's like
right.
Bin Laden was killed, boom, it's done. Oil spill, it's done. House of Cards spreads it out a little more, which I do like.
Yeah.
In terms of things that I'm wondering whether, and this might get a little into the pacing, is I wonder if they're pushing it a little too hard, too fast sometimes. Mm-hmm. Kevin Spacey goes from House Majority Whip to Vice President in one season,
right,
and then from Vice President to President in after 2 seasons.
Yeah.
So I think maybe when the history books are written, that might be what kind of takes it down a peg from Mad Men or some of the shows that kind of are more slower in their pacing. Just because it almost seems like they're rushing it. It's like they must have so many ideas of what they want to do with him as president.
Right.
So let's get to it really fast.
Yeah.
Although we might be thinking that because we're binging it. We see him go to president in 2 weekends, as opposed to if it was over a whole year, it might not seem as fast.
Right.
But be that as it may, we still, even though we can kind of read the tea leaves that, they're going to get to president, it still has us gripped and wanting to find that out, almost like a carrot on the end of the stick. We still want to watch it,
right,
rather than, I know what's going to happen. They still get you hooked.
You know the end result, but it's a matter of how we get there that's interesting. I agree. I mean, for some reason, to me, season 1, I just loved the Russo storyline, and I felt like it was, I don't know if pragmatic, a little bit better in terms of the slow burn to getting to vice president.
Right.
Versus this time, I kind of did feel more so like, man, we're just trying to get the president here, and there's a lot of filler in between, which I guess we can kind of get into. So let's go ahead and dig into season 2 a little bit.
Okay.
So, and as far as the pacing and overall tone of season 2, what do you think of that? I guess you kind of talked about it just now.
Yeah, the pacing, like we kind of talked about it. It seems almost like they're in a hurry to get it done. And in The Wire, they do catch Avon Barksdale at the end of season 1, but it didn't seem, to me, it didn't seem like we've reached ending point so fast, because it was each season was almost you thought you've solved it. Police detectives? Well, actually, it's the tip of the iceberg, because the Greek is really in charge in season 2. Or, the politicians are involved, and, every season became a new layer.
Right.
Here, it's like we're 0 to 60 to the president so fast, and I'm curious to see where they're going to go. I'm not going to totally criticize it yet, but it does feel like they're rushing it a little much. In terms of tone, it seems season 2 is a lot darker, and that's hard to say, because they do kill off Russo at the end of season 1. But 2 is off with a bang. Zoe Barnes is in front of that, pushed in front of a metro train, dead right off the bat. So it's almost got that Game of Thrones thing where you feel like anyone can go at any time, which I do like.
Yeah.
But they've definitely built. I miss the Russo subplot too. He was a great character.
Exactly. I felt like, and we'll get into this as well with the supporting characters, but I felt like that was just such a great supporting character, and I felt like he really needed Russo, and that whole little chess piece, like he needed that move, and so you invest a lot more in that, versus with this one, I did feel like, season 1, the episode 1, once the scene with Zoe Barnes, I can't lie, I usually watch these things at night, and so I was kind of nodding off. But I saw he was talking to Zoe, and then all of a sudden, like, I had to rewind it. I was like, did he really
Did that just
push?
happen?
Yeah. And so then I was like wide awake. I'm like,
Stay away
oh my
from
goodness.
Cathedral Heights Metro. It doesn't exist, but I'm never going there if they build that one.
Right, exactly. So I think it did get off to a great start. And then I think to develop the overall, like the China plot came in and everything. So it got really slow. But at the same time, you're binging, so you kind of just go ahead and give it the benefit of the doubt. But then once we get to the latter portion, I do feel as though there was some good payoffs, from what happened in the beginning. But definitely, it picks up around, episode 9 through 13. Let's talk about the subplots and supporting characters. So Zoe's boyfriend, Lucas Goodwin, I feel like he was more of a filler subplot, and you were talking about this just a little while ago, but just in terms of the whole hacking, I thought it was a horrible use of Jimmy Simpson, who I loved in Breakout Kings. So he's like one of those quirky,
Petting the cat.
Yeah, character actor. But he became more of a stereotype in this, and in some ways it was kind of like, okay, let's go ahead and get rid of this Lucas character. But like you said, it is a good way to kind of have the current events brought into it. And I do think one of the things, like you mentioned earlier, that I do enjoy is seeing the crooked politics. And it's kind of scary in a sense that you're just like, wow, Frank Underwood has so much power that he can pretty much have this guy disappear.
Kill people.
And he did it. Yeah, same thing. I mean, he killed Russo. He can kill whoever he wants to. So
what's the line in The Godfather? Diane Keaton tells Michael Corleone, Al Pacino, she said, "Do you know how naive you sound? Politicians don't have men killed." And he goes, "Who's being naive, Kay?" So it's
right.
Yeah. But with the subplot with the Lucas Goodwin and the Julian Assange, Ed Snowden type character,
right,
petting the cat. I think it's all an extension of the Peter Russo thing. Frank Underwood has to, that's his big sin from season 1. And in order to make the leap to president after doing that, there's 2 pieces he needs to sweep under the rug. One is Zoe Barnes. He offs her right off the bat, kills her. And then Lucas Goodwin, he sets up in this giant, sting. Basically, it turns out that it's an FBI, undercover, and he goes to jail. So he's locked away, at least for now. I'm sure that's a way of getting it off the table, but it'll come back, I'm sure, for a little more All the President's Men type, journalist stuff. But there is that piece of the third journalist, Zoe's friend, that's off up in the Northeast teaching the class. So that's still dangling out there too.
Right.
So I have a feeling her and Lucas will come back in it. But I think what replaced the Peter Russo character, he was kind of like the addict, troubled, drug-induced guy that, that Spacey and his chief of staff, Doug Stamper, that they kind of took advantage to, the chess piece you're talking about. The new one is the prostitute, Rachel.
Right.
She's also like the overcoming her demons in the meetings and the church meetings, and so that's kind of their next, the way they're using her too. Except she as we know, off Stamper in the final scene. And they had that shot when she gets out of the car before she kills him. They had that high angle up by the traffic light. There's got to be a camera on there that caught it. That's my prediction.
That's true.
They're gonna see someone. They're gonna see them flee and find the dead body. And
it could be. At the same time, it seemed like it was rural enough where maybe they were out, out in somewhere Maryland, and
But also with Russo, there's another supporting character that I thought they were going to go to more this season, but they didn't at all. He wasn't in the season 2 at all. That hopefully they'll come back to again. Was Russo's his childhood friend from his home district? You remember the Italian guy?
Right. He was
like
cool.
The labor union guy.
Yeah.
His name. He was almost like the Jimmy Stewart, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, every man, the pure politics, and then Russo went and kind of lost his way once he was in Washington. And the reason I say that is because his character's name, look it up on IMDb, it's Capra.
Really?
Yeah, so there's Mr. Smith right there.
Breaking it down, Jason
Breaking news.
Fraley.
No. So anyway, I thought that maybe when I saw that, I was like, oh, he's going to be this everyman, why everyone actually got into politics versus the corrupt Washington.
Right.
But they didn't use him at all this season, so I'm hoping he comes back.
Well, one subplot that I did enjoy, and you touched on as well, was Claire with the military assault.
Right.
I thought that it was poignant, like you said. It was timely, but at the same time, I felt as though it pushed the story forward. And as we'll get into Claire in a little bit, it really helped us to see a different side of her character, because we know Claire is like ice cold, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But anyways, I did enjoy that portion of it. I felt like it built the story, built the world, and added things. What did you think about it?
The Claire subplot?
Yeah.
The military. Yeah. I thought it gave her a lot of sympathy. I thought it kind of explained a lot of her actions. It seems like all these adulterous characters, whether it's Mad Men or House of Cards, they seem like they always have some sexual thing they're dealing with in their past. You know,
Right.
Don Draper, you know, as his first sexual encounter as a boy was with a prostitute in a brothel, and that's why he womanizes, or they try to say that.
Yeah.
And you know, so you see that Claire's been having this affair with the photographer that that almost sinks them entirely in their political career, thanks to Remy, which is another cool supporting character working for Raymond Tusk. But yeah, so I thought it gave a little motivation to her character, and I thought it made us really sympathize with her. But at the same time, she's ruthless too. I mean, Claire,
definitely.
She's like the Lady Macbeth of the show. That's what Robin Wright told me. Is she modeled it after Lady Macbeth in terms of it's almost like this power couple, her and Frank, and until the very end of season 2, you don't see much romantic contact between them at all. There's even I remember a shot behind the couch, and they're both sitting there, but there's no arm around her. Right. They're not kissing. It's like they're just mutual, benefiting off the power couple political status.
Exactly. I think to end out the supporting characters, I really enjoyed the barbecue shop owner, Freddie Hayes.
Yeah.
And then, as you touched on, the photographer, Adam Galloway. I thought that they did a great job of in rounding out their characters, but at the same time, it was kind of like they both kind of had that walk off into the sunset, but more so showing that if you're in close proximity of the Underwoods, like it doesn't matter whether, in the case of Freddie, they had a good relationship where so much so that,
it's like
Frank
his
would,
escape.
And Frank would actually go to his house to say, listen, I'm sorry to say this, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But it was cool to just to see the demise of that relationship. And you could tell it was one that, again, Frank didn't want to give up. All right, let's quickly just get into the main characters. Okay. I guess first off, we can talk about Robin Wright's performance. Obviously, I think she really steals the show. Like you were saying earlier, I kind of liken her to Bonnie and Clyde, like 1967, Warren Beatty, Faye Dunaway, in the sense that she's in control. You know what I mean? Like she is that solid rock behind Frank.
Oh, yeah.
And granted, Frank is just as ruthless, but I feel like, who knows where like later seasons go.
Oh yeah.
But I could see her doing some major damage. So what do you think about Robin Wright? And it's the other thing, it's hard to believe that she's Jenny from Forrest Gump. Like, seriously?
You didn't say it right. It's Ginny.
Jenny!
Yeah, and the Princess Bride.
Right.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and I've always loved her from we grew up on watching Robin Wright.
Yeah, I had
and
a crush on Jenny.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Everyone did.
Yeah.
Even though she used Forrest, man.
Yeah,
Although she gave him Forrest Jr., Haley Joel. She
aggressive.
birthed Haley Joel Osment. All right, back
Okay,
up.
go.
All right. But yeah, so I love. She kind of fell off the map for a while in terms of like her career. She was married to Sean Penn, and they've since split. And it's great that since that split, she's really taken off. She won the Golden Globe, and I remember her sprinting to the stage to accept the award.
Right.
And she's a major player in it again, and I love it. I like that you mentioned the Bonnie and Clyde thing because that just got me thinking. In Bonnie and Clyde, there's this subtext that Clyde is impotent and can't get it up. They even Arthur Penn has their gun facing downward on the bed.
Right.
Go look at it.
Right.
And so in this case, it's almost like Claire. It's again the same thing. Whereas Frank's, I think he's closet homosexual. I mean, there's hints in both seasons, both in season 1 with the with his buddy at the college. They do the overnight in the library,
Right.
and then this season with the threesome that made a lot of people go, "Whoa!"
Yeah, like I was like, where did that come from?
Yeah. But I think I think that connected to his buddy in the library. That's the only glue that I can see.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's a little digression, but I do think that she is really kind of pulling the strings in a way.
Right.
And I think that she's going to take a larger role. Like when we did before the season started, I did a House of Cards like with a card deck, and I did the president as the ace and Frank as king, but I put her as queen because she's going to rise. I can almost see her like running a campaign against him or something.
Right.
Husband
Taking
versus
over.
wife, yeah, man.
Exactly. But so Kevin Spacey as Frank Underwood, I mean, he definitely, I mean, like you said, like he's done everything in film. Like we're talking about in the history books, we study this in film class, some of his roles. And so now he takes on Frank Underwood, which on one hand, being from South Carolina, you know, sometimes I hate that drawl that's so stereotypical. But I do think like he plays this amazing, captivating character that even when he breaks the fourth wall and looks, you know, into you, like, that's part of the fun. Like, I can't wait for him to, you know, break the fourth wall and say something. So what do you think about his portrayal?
I think that's what makes his character so fascinating. Yeah, there's the corruption and the Southern drawl and everything, and it has that narration that it's, you know, not quite noir, but, you know, it's something that you couldn't say to a person. It would sound corny, but when it's narrated to the direct address to the audience, I don't know, it's juicy and it's, you know, it's almost hard-boiled dialogue in a way. And I think that's one of the genius things. You know, Fincher directed the first few episodes, and David Fincher of Social Network. And I think they really brilliantly weave in the direct address, because sometimes it'll be just straight talking to you, but sometimes it'll be a glance. It'll be, you know, he's subversively talking to another politician, and then it'll just be like, and then he'll look back. But you know that he's conning the person because he's let us in on his world, and then we're back. And Fincher also does a good job of bringing the text messages, allowing them to pop up on the screen. I'd never, I'm sure it'd been done before, but I'd never seen it in the show done like regularly.
Yeah. I think that's something that's kind of happening a lot more now. And it's cool to see that, again, the modern world is incorporating itself into films like Fruitvale Station. You know, he texts and things like that. And so, yeah, like you said, it's really cool to see that, because instead of like before where we actually had to look at the phone, like
some
instead
static
of just
shot.
Exactly, it just pops up on screen, and because we're a cell phone texting nation, like we understand, we can go keep moving with it.
And for a while, screenwriters actually, even for a while, there was a period there in the last like 10, 20 years where we lived in the digital world, but screenwriters almost shied away from it and tried to find ways. I know we've written screenplays before where it's like, oh, how do I make him forget his phone at home so I don't have to deal with that logic thing of, oh, why didn't he just call 911 in this situation? It's like this whole new thing, a challenge that screenwriters didn't have to deal with back in the golden age. You know, you could be off on this night journey in your character and you couldn't just pick up and call the cops. Now you can. So for a while, people shied away from it, but I'm glad to see a show embrace it, and I think popping up on the screen is a way to do that. You can it's almost like reading subtitles in a foreign film yet still watching the action. You can almost communicate two things at once. So instead of shying away from it, we've totally embraced it and added a layer. So I love that.
Definitely. So I guess the last kind of question is, House of Cards obviously is kind of like, it's almost like the Redskins for us, right? Because it's like in our backyard, it's up in Baltimore, it's, you know, it's our home team, you know. So what do you think about in terms of House of Cards season 3, like making sure that it comes back to Baltimore? Do you have any thoughts on that? Or?
Well, it seemed for a while, it seems like it's coming back. I mean, for a while they kind of held it ransom and said, you know, unless you give us more tax credits, we're going to go elsewhere. And then Maryland lawmakers signaled that they're going to, you know, allow them to stay. Although there's a whole controversy of where that money's going to come from. There's I have it here. It's the Special Fund for the Preservation of Cultural Arts, where some of the money's it might take away from other local, you know, filmmakers. Although the general exposure of having such a huge show on the map, maybe that outweighs and justifies the means, or maybe that will allow more local people to work on the show. And I think it was something about like $250 million boost to the economy, 6,000 jobs. So, you know, some of those might be local crew members. Some are probably imported from LA. So you could argue that it's taking away from local, funds, but at the same time, it might be employing local crew. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I both know people that have worked on the show in some kind of way. So, I'm not just saying like a person, like we know people that, and so it's helping to feed families and, pay bills. So
yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of people. I mean, a lot of people might not know this, but there's people that live in DC, are established, and whenever a big production comes to town, they work on it. Like,
Right.
Lorenzo Milan did sound mixing for the entire Wire, or Donnie Eros did gaffs all the time. But they're local people,
Right.
But they're high quality. These are top-notch, legendary shows.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a pool of people that exist in this area that get called to work. So it's not exactly everything's being imported.
Right.
The actors a lot, but you'll be talking to some local actors that are getting. That's a teaser.
Exactly. Well, Jason, thanks again, of course. As always, I mean, you are a friend to the show. Anytime you want to sit in this seat, you can sit there. How can people reach you and find Jay Frey above the Jay Frey?
Well, I'm on my reviews air Friday mornings on WTOP at 40 past the hour on the odd hours. So you can hear that, and then there's web pieces to go along with them that are much longer than the minute on-air piece. So if just because you hear the on-air piece, you might want to go check out the web piece, because I'm starting doing some video reviews on there too. A lot of cool stuff.
Saw some of
and you
that.
can follow me on Twitter at JFrey WTOP, 'cause that's the nickname around the office, JFrey. And I also run a film appreciation website called thefilmspectrum.com, where it's mostly in-depth reviews of classic movies. Like we just went into Bonnie and Clyde and All the President's Men. I love it, because to me the great thing is time is being erased. You can pull up anything on Netflix. You can pull up Bonnie and Clyde as fast as you can House of Cards.
Exactly.
There's no time anymore.
Yeah,
so I love it.
Well, Jason, thanks again for coming on the show, man. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.